Well, kids, welcome to an audio edition of Room Shots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk right here in the Rock Rage Radio Network. I have a brand new friend here. You can't see him, but I can tell you he's the real deal. His name's Alex Cortes, and you told me you were in Huntington Beach. Is that correct? No, sorry, Huntington Beach. Is that where you're at?
No, I'm here in LA.
Oh, you're in L.A. Okay. For some
Yeah,
reason, I thought you were in one of the OC territories there. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing just fine. How's life up in the frozen north?
Well, it's sort of unfreezing a bit. I wouldn't say our weathering is considering I was in Cuba a month ago. This is pretty terrible.
Oh yeah, I would bet. I would bet. How'd you like Cuba?
Cuba was amazing. My second time there, and great people, and played an '80s themed event down there, so that was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, that sounds awesome. I actually lived in Mexico for 14 months, so I know somewhat what you're talking about in terms of the whole Latin American, that culture and all that kind of thing. I speak Spanish too, so but my mom actually was in Cuba, but I never been, but I heard it's really awesome.
It's beautiful, and I mean it's hard for Americans to get down there for obvious reasons, but they treat people amazing because they know the tourists are the ones that take care of them, right? So it's cool.
Right, right.
So, what do you have on the go, man? I know that Raquel, our mutual friend Raquel,
Yeah.
suggests that we connect. So, what's on the go with Alex?
Well, real quick before we get started with that, I noticed when I was able to see you that you had the four little Kiss dolls up behind you.
I do, yes.
Okay. Well, then I got to tell you my sob story.
Okay.
Late 70s, I think it was 78, about the time of Alive 2, or when they were in the process of recording Alive 2. And me and my friends basically, worship Kiss like deities.
Uh,
And this is back in the 70s. There was no internet or nothing, and music was like rarely ever even on TV back then. It was, there was no MTV or nothing. So, whatever music you liked, I think was more special for that reason. But anyway, so what happened was my friend Anthony, somehow his mom obtained 4 tickets for to go see Kiss at the Forum. I assume you know what the Forum is, right?
oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to make sure. Anyway, so originally it was going to be me, Anthony, Anthony's sister, and his mom. Okay. And all of a sudden, and by the way, I had never been to a concert before. I was still a kid. And, this is back in the 70s. It wasn't totally different deal back then. The music industry in general was a lot more limited than it is now. But anyway, so all of a sudden, for some freaking reason, Anthony's mom can't go. And so, like, she spent the whole day trying to find somebody to take us. And I actually hit up some of my relatives. Of course, none of them were interested. Anyway, so she finally finds somebody who can go. And the some bitch wanted to take his girlfriend. So guess who was ass out?
That would have been the famous, probably the Love Gun show where there was all kinds of pictures from the day of the big billboard that they took outside the Coliseum or the Forum there, if I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
correctly. And I
yeah.
have a
This
similar
was
story, bud, because on that very tour, my next door neighbor wanted to take me. My mother wouldn't let me go because she said I was too young to go to a drug-induced crazy show. And you can't see it,
right.
but I'm wearing my Wicked Lester shirt, so we're checking a lot of boxes here today.
Oh, well, all right.
Yeah, man.
I actually did, of course, see Kiss in the '90s three times when they reunited, which was awesome. But I mean, Jesus Christ, seeing them in the late '70s, oh man,
Yeah,
that would have been like encountering a UFO, if you know what I mean.
no question,
Totally
man.
different, totally different deal back then. But this was like, I think, if I remember correctly, this is like shortly before Alive 2 came out. So yeah, it would have been that tour where they were recording and
Yeah,
doing that
it's
whole
incredible.
thing.
Um,
As for Wicked Lester, I was curious if before we get on to other subjects, is there any actual recordings of them?
yeah, so there was a box set that they put out 2001, and it
Yeah.
had a handful of Wicked Lester. It's kind of funny because they did a version of She, And they did a couple other tunes, but they almost sounded like Steely Dan. Like they had like clarinet and trumpet and stuff going on. It was really weird kind of stuff, right?
Right, right,
Um,
right.
but yeah, so thankfully they became Kiss.
Yeah, yeah, right. Well, the thing about it is, with Kiss, and then again, we'll move on to other subjects, but the smartest things you had the two Jewish guys who were like, who were like financial geniuses and whatnot, and even if they had, Stanley Eisen and Chaim Witz would have gone on to be millionaires, even if they had never started the band, but then they brought on the other two guys who were more like partiers, not so responsible, not such, great businessmen, whatever the case may be. But that combination is what made it happen.
Yeah, no question, no question. And you know, again, it's just too bad personalities couldn't mesh and get along. But that's just they say as a band, right? That's just the way that it goes.
Oh, that is actually no. I would say that is not typical. What's typical is that you start, for no good reason, you start hating each other's guts, and then pretty soon everybody's competing with everybody else, and all kinds of stupid interpersonal crap that had nothing to do with music starts to rear its ugly head. And generally speaking, the band's done before they ever get to even record anything. That's the usual.
Yeah, I mean, I just finished reading what the heck is it called? It's the Van Halen autobiography that their former manager wrote. And the same thing happened. Eddie couldn't stand Roth. Roth couldn't stand Eddie. Alex hated both of them except for his brother, and Michael Anthony was just happy to be there. You know what I mean? It was just the
Right.
the story.
Right. And
So
and and of course, goes without saying that they were partying like fiends, and that never helps.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. So what do you got on the go, man? You're in L, like you're right in LA. Is that correct?
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, I've been hearing, so I've been talking to a number of people in LA over the last, well, I've had this podcast for 5 years, but in the last, say, I'll say 8 months in particular, they're telling me that it seems like there's, it never really fizzled out, but there seems to be a bit of an uptick or a new excitement around the town. Is that an accurate statement?
Well, I'm not really sure, to tell you the truth. I'm not these days. Well, right now, as we're speaking, I'm kind of in loner mode. I haven't really been going out in public or nothing like that, and I kind of have my own insular little world going on. So I'm not really sure about that. But if that be the case, then I would certainly welcome it. Also, maybe it was because of Raquel. Maybe that's why you thought I was down in Orange County, because she's down in Orange County.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it's funny because I have a friend that used to play for the Ducks. He won a cup with them in when I think it was 2008, and
Uh-huh.
He said all the hockey players on the Ducks used to live in Huntington Beach and all that stuff. And one of my all-time favorite shows is the OC. So I mean, yeah.
Right,
Anyway, but
right.
so enough about that. But so what have you had on the go, Alex? I mean, like you've got a background obviously in music. You've been at it for some time. What's I guess on the dance card right now?
Well, as you know, real quick before
Yeah.
we get into that, since you're Canadian, I wanted to throw this out there. I think one of the greatest unsung heroes of the Canadian music industry is Teenage Head. And nobody ever even mentions them. And you know what? I think, unfortunately, I mean, their first album is by far one of the greatest albums of the whole 70s punk movement.
Yep.
Unfortunately, with them, I think that their nationality was a strike against them. If they had been American or if they had been British, they would have gone down much bigger in history than they did, unfortunately.
Well,
But yeah,
here's what happens in Canada, and I mean, I was talking with somebody about this the other day.
yeah.
Um, One of the things that we have that you guys don't is we have a government that actually issues grants and funding and stuff. So if somebody wants to record an album, they have access to be able to apply to grants to do funding.
Oh, okay.
What
Wow,
ends up
that's awesome.
happening though is you get that funding, and part of the mandate and the criteria is there's a very Canadian angle to it that doesn't necessarily translate to our good friends down in the south, right? So it might be a style or a genre or whatever, and it never really seems to any of our folks that get down there. I would never call them classic rock bands, with the exception of maybe April Wine or Triumph or Rush.
Yeah.
Very
Hmm.
few of our really good rock bands, they'll do well in Europe, they'll do well in Canada. They typically can't get arrested in the United States. It's sad, but that's kind of the way that it goes.
Yeah, and it's really strange how that whole dynamic, works out. A lot of times with that sort of thing, there's no real rhyme or reason to it. But absolutely. Let me also throw this out there. I think that that people are so focused on American and British bands,
Yep.
since they make up the majority of what has been popular. Let's just say since the mid 50s, the beginning of rock and roll, Chuck Berry and all that. But Canada has produced a lot of amazing bands. And I think that, Canada doesn't get nearly enough credit. But yeah, Rush, April Wine. I love the Guess Who. And then,
Yep.
of course, and then of course, Bachman Turner Overdrive, love them. And then the punk bands, DOA and all that. And I think it's kind of a shame, but I don't think you as a nation, I don't think y'all get your due up there for all the great acts you've produced.
No, well, and I thank you for that. And I mean, part of it, I would say, you're probably correct and accurate. And then the other part, I would say that sometimes we just don't do ourselves any favors because, um, the way that we, I guess, impart our message to the world sometimes just isn't conducive to what is going to be accepted in your land, right? I can tell you right now, when I was growing up, everybody that I
Yeah.
listened to was Rat and Van Halen and Kiss and Motley Crue and Autograph and
Right.
Keel and like I should have grown
Right.
up on the Sunset Strip, man. Um,
Right.
I
Right. Right.
wasn't. I used to get chastised. Iron Maiden and Def Leppard and the list goes on. I used to get chastised up here because I wasn't into Canadiana, which typically tends to be a little folky or Celtically or whatever. So it's a good point, and I always like to talk to my neighbors down there and see how much of Canadian music they know, and obviously you're very dialed in.
Well, yeah, I'm not only a musician, I'm a gigantic music geek on top of it. So there's that, but then actually, a lot of it too is that certain Canadian acts will get big down here, but a lot of us Yankees aren't even aware they're Canadian. We don't know, nobody tells us. So,
Well,
I mean,
that's
Rush, everybody knows Rush. Okay,
yep,
everybody knows that, and then even though it's not rock, everybody knows like Celine Dion and Alanis Morissette. Everybody knows they're Canadian. But then I mean, for years I had no idea that Teenage Head was Canadian. I had no idea April Wine was Canadian. None. And I was, for a kid my age, we'll just say late 70s, early 80s, I was pretty dialed in, but that was, I mean, late 70s, early 80s, we still had all the mod cons. We still had electricity. We still had TV. We still had, flush toilets. We had all that. But, the media was a lot more limited than what
absolutely.
we have now. So, nowadays, if a band's from anywhere, it doesn't matter. You're going to pretty much know about it as soon as you're turned on to the band. You're going to know something about their background, where they're from, blah, 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 blah. But, like I said, back then, a lot of stuff. Oh, Triumph. That's another one.
Yep,
Believe it or not, I had no idea Triumph was Canadian for years. The ones like Rush, everybody knew Rush.
yep,
Okay, everybody knew they were Canadian. All right, that was, and then later on, it started to change later on again. Everybody knew Celine Dion was French Canadian. Everybody knew Alanis was Canadian. But that was somewhat later, if you know what I mean. So
yep,
for a long time, a lot of bands I did not know. For a long time, I did not know the Guess Who or Bachman Turner Overdrive were Canadian.
yep.
I did not. I just assumed they were American. I didn't know.
We've got a thing as Canadians where we want to be accepted by people south of the border because I think at the end of the day, if you can make it down there, that's where the money is, right? And April Wine is a good example. I mean, April Wine was from 10 minutes up the road where I'm sitting right now in a
All
place
right.
called Bedford,
Mm-hmm.
Nova Scotia, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
and they were always heroes of mine and my friends because we always thought, okay, if those guys can be a rock band and break the norm and go out and take on the world, there's hope for us little punks, right? And so they were always ones that they just played here last weekend. Now, obviously, it's not the original guys, but I mean, they're still out there doing it. So it's
Yeah.
it's
Some of the
interesting.
original guys, right?
One, well, no, actually, none of them, but one guy that was what is it, version two or Mach 2 of April Wine. He was Brian Greenway, the guitar player. He's still in that
Oh, right.
outfit. Yeah.
That does happen every now and then. Of course, I'm sure you're familiar with Napalm Death. Not one single member,
Yeah.
original member is still in that band, but they're still going. So,
Well, cover that in my podcast a lot because my whole thing is this, man. You always hear it. It just seems like it rolls off the tongue. Oh, it's a cover band. Well, you know what? Somebody still wants to see it, judging by the thousands of people that are still buying tickets. Somebody still owns the rights to it, meaning they want to make money. So it's like the choice
sure.
is either go or don't go. This whole
Yeah.
thing about I'm going to keep calling it a cover band in hopes that I'm going to convince people to not go is just silly to me. You know what I mean?
It's ridiculous. I agree 100%. And, I would also add to that, for example, with like 21st Century Doors, I think a lot of people that didn't like that didn't want to like it.
Yeah.
They had an attitude about it. And it's like, which I thought was silly. I mean, I didn't actually go see it, but I saw it on video or actually, on DVD. I still say video, even though VHS is long gone. But
Yeah.
anyway, I thought it was fabulous. You see, I didn't expect it to be. Of course, it's not going to be the Doors. Jim Morrison's in the ground for Christ's
Yeah.
sake, and
Well, I don't know.
I
Did you
thought,
see? Did you see they found some dude that there's a documentary about it. I don't know if you've seen this or not.
what?
He's been living in somewhere like North Carolina or South Carolina. He's an 81-year-old man that bears a striking resemblance to Jim Morrison, and they're basically saying they think it could be him because he was buried in the only country in the world that you can't exhume a body, right?
Oh, I didn't. I was not aware of that,
Yeah,
but
go look it up. It's
yeah,
interesting.
I will. I will definitely look it up. But the point I was making was, I thought Ian Asbury did a great
Yeah,
job, and I thought the other three were absolutely fabulous. And so it's like, if you don't like it, don't watch it. If you don't like it,
absolutely.
don't buy it. If you don't like it, don't eat it. If you don't like it, don't listen to it. And it does get a little bit silly, especially with music, that we start to think that their opinion is sacred or whatever. Now, that said, I mean, like me, for example, if somebody gave me a ticket, I would go. Okay. But I will not pay my own money to go see AC/DC without Malcolm. I won't do it.
Yeah, that's fair.
I won't pay my own money to go see Kansas without Carrie Lindgren,
Yeah,
but I don't condemn it. I don't say it's bad. That's a personal choice. But yeah, the whole thing about like it's saying people condemn it, act like it shouldn't exist and all that. That's silly.
it's just a righteous sort of thing. And to your point with AC/DC, I mean, I'm a drummer, and Phil Rudd is one of my all-time favorite. I mean, nobody plays a 2/4 like that guy, man. And so I get what you're saying. In terms of what
He's
you have, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say about Phil Rudd. I mean, very, very few drummers in history have done simple better than he did.
Oh
I
my God.
mean, man, his groove was, I mean, he didn't do a lot. He wasn't Neil Peart, but I mean, the groove he had was incredible.
Um, the live version of Let There Be Rock that's on If You Want Blood is at 192 BPM, and
Mm,
it's almost 8 minutes long, and it's four on the floor with eighth notes in the hi hat with two stops in the entire song. I defy any drummer to try to play that
yeah.
and survive because it's wild. Um, so what do you have on the go, Alex? Like obviously Raquel she's a smart gal. She always tells me to connect with people that are moving and shaking. What's up with you?
Okay. Well, the band is called Noir L.A.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little background. Originally, I wanted to call it LA Noir, but unfortunately, shortly after that, a fairly famous novel with that name came out, and then a very internationally popular video game with that
Uh-huh.
name came out. So obviously I wasn't going to use that, so I just switched the wording around. And basically, I have two albums, and I'm currently working on the third. First two albums, I had help, a friend of mine, but that person is now living in another state, so I'm having to do it all by myself, and it's a lot more work,
Right.
and then of course, in addition to that, I'm constantly trying to, promote the band, the albums in any way I can. One of the reasons I'm working with Raquel is because, and I think a lot of musicians will know what I'm talking about here. It's like, for me at least, creating the art is the easy part, but then selling it, promoting it, all that's a whole different friggin' ball game. And that's, a lot, for me at least, that's a lot harder. But that's basically what I have going on right at the moment.
Well, and you know what though? The whole knowing is half the battle sort of GI Joe thing. That's an important thing because I deal with so I'm a musician who's a drummer who plays in a band with his girlfriend who promotes her music, who promotes other people's music. But I didn't start out as a podcaster, and I learned the tricks of the trade. Um, but I'm very smart at asking questions. I'm very smart at listening to answers, but I'm smart at knowing what I'm good at and what I'm not good at.
Yeah,
And
sure.
unfortunately, a lot of musicians think they can go on the internet and do some research and just be good at anything, and it's just not the case.
Oh, no, of course not. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. We all have talents, we all have things we're good at and not so good at. And as we all know, especially like Jesus back in the 60s, God, everybody got ripped off back then.
Yeah.
Everybody, because these were musicians, they were artists, they weren't businessmen, and they had no idea what they were dealing with. So yeah, that happened all the time, all the time. And in fact, to get back to Kiss, I think a lot of musicians did not get screwed because of Kiss, because, they kind of set a new standard that didn't really allow for bands to get screwed like they had been, you know,
Well, one of
as
the
far as
things
that
though,
goes.
I interviewed Bobby Rondi and Ellie because he was in line to replace Peter Chris. Now Eric Carr eventually get the job, but he told me some stuff that I agreed to not record, but he said I was fine. And some of their business practices were pretty I'll just say
Shady.
questionable. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, like they cut Eric Carr off of his health insurance when he had cancer because they wanted him. It was going to be cheaper for them to do it out in the L.A.
Yeah.
Little things like that. They're kind of known for, and I mean, people do the old it's business, but one of the things that
Well, yeah, yeah, yes, it's business, but at the same time, we're still human beings, and before business, I have a whole big one. I won't go into it, but I have a whole big long theory. You see, I'm big, big, big into human psychology, and I'm big, big, big into history, and I'm really, really interested in human evolution.
yeah,
Not only that, but I'm an enormous wildlife fanatic, and I've spent more time around various wild animals than any 400 people you'll ever meet in your life combined, and all that. And I've been watching documentaries about wildlife ever since I was a little kid, and part of what makes us unique as human beings is that it's not all cutthroat, is that we can show compassion, or that we can, like, oh, I could make millions of dollars, but I'm going to have to screw people, and so I'm not doing it, that kind of thing.
yeah.
So there's that too. And I think personally, you can be wealthy and do well for yourself and not be a fucking cutthroat asshole about it.
Well, this is the thing, and I mean, a phrase that's always driven me nuts when somebody says it. Well, it's not personal, it's business. Basically, what you're saying is you're going to screw me over, and you want me to be all right with it. Um,
Yeah, right, right,
you
right.
know what I mean? And
Yeah, yeah,
I've like in my lifetime, I mean, I get in the business in high school, and my very first band that I'm in, I ended up getting sued by a sound man, you know, and away we
Oh, right.
go.
Yeah.
Um, but the whole thing is I just don't know what it is about this freaking business that it attracts so many bottom feeding people. When the really successful people are typically not like that. They typically operate on a plane that is somewhat, you know, decent. I mean, you do hear the stories of
Yeah.
people getting screwed over and what have you, but this
Right.
whole notion that you just basically have to over every person that you're around is pretty nonsensical to me.
Well, that's no matter what industry you're in, a sociopath is a sociopath. And, with people like that, I think personally, with people like that, it's not only that they don't feel bad about the bad things they do. I think they kind of feel they like the negative empowerment of it. I think, it's like not only am I making money and getting ahead and all that kind of stuff, but I think there's a certain amount of, like, I don't know what word to use exactly. There's a certain amount of like sadism that goes along with that too.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
fair.
don't
And I mean, you
I
do
don't think
get.
it's strictly about, oh, well, I'm just doing this to make the money and blah blah. No, you'd be an asshole either way. I think that money more on, I mean, I can't say in every case because human beings are unpredictable, but I would say in most every case, alcohol and money, all they do is bring out who the hell you were in the first place.
Hey, that's what, that's a great line. That's a great line, and I'm going to quote my new philosopher friend Alex Cortes after that because that's some poignant info.
Well,
Look, my
thank
friend,
you.
one of the things that I've figured out about podcasting is that if you go too long, you lose people's interest. So we've gone a bit. Where do I send my viewers and my listeners to find out more about what you guys are doing, what your band is doing, where they can get your music, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay. Well, they can either go to Bandcamp
Yeah.
and look up Noir L.A. Bandcamp, or Noir L.A. through YouTube or through Facebar or Facebook. I'm sorry, I call it Facebar. But anyway, any one of those, and Noir L.A. Is, as far as I know, I don't think there's nobody else using that name, so it should be pretty easy to find.
Awesome.
My name is, I don't know if I should be doing this, but my name is Alex, Alex. My last name Cortes. And if you want to, like, anybody wants to look me up, I can then send them links and what have.
Fantastic. Well, you know what, man? Let's we're now Facebook friends. We've been messaging quite a bit. Let's stay in
Absolutely.
touch because my plan is to bring my lovely down to LA at some point, either late this year or next, and we will need to hook up and have a pop or
Oh,
something.
absolutely. Absolutely, man. Sounds wonderful.
Oh,
Sounds
my
wonderful.
friend, thanks a lot for tuning in,
Okay.
kids.
All right. Thanks for having me.
See
You
you
take
next
care of
week.
yourself, bro.
Ciao.
Bye.